Okay, President Brown.
Great. It's 6:21. We're reconvening to open session. And apologies for the late start. Moving on to closed session report. Item 5, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. AL 2324-3. In closed session, the board received information on closed session item AL 2324-3. Item 2, BEA negotiations, nothing to report. CSEA negotiations, nothing to report. And we have next the patriotic exercise. Don't have any guests for that, right?
No, we do not.
Okay, all right, why don't we do the pledge of allegiance together? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call. Lisa.
Here.
Sarah.
Here.
Lawrence.
Here.
Dan.
Here.
I'm here as well. All 5. Item 8 is approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Public statements related to agenda items.
We do not have any further. Brown.
Okay. Next up is the consent agenda. As we say every time, the board has reviewed all materials on the consent agenda, and we believe them to be non-controversial, so we'll vote as in a block on the consent items. Is there a motion?
We'll make a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Great. And then item 11 is the local control accountability plan, 11A.
Principal Paveo, thank you for joining us tonight.
Oh. Thank you. So there isn't a whole lot to report. Since last time, we still have not received the feedback from the county on our second attempt or our second draft. This thing on?
It is now.
Well, it is on, but I'm not using it correctly. We did make a few adjustments, Nate and I, based on some feedback, we increased goal 1 ELA and math goals to make it a 5% increase over the next 3 years to go up to 90% in ELA and 85% in math at or above grade level in 3 years. We also, in goal 3, there was some edits that needed to be made. Nate Wong made the edits. It was a flip-flop of a write-up or a narrative that was in another goal or under another goal. So it basically says the CASP 2022-23 ELA and math results highlight the pressing need for targeted support for students with disabilities within our district. CASP results, the CASP results revealed, and it goes through that. And then Burlingame School District believes that each and every student deserves instruction that is tailored to their specific strengths and needs, whether they are outlined in an individual education plan or not. Acting on this belief requires considerable resources from both a personnel and material standpoint. Proper staffing is essential starting point, but the district strives to continuously build capacity in all staff by providing robust, evidence-based professional learning each year. Additionally, a high-quality curriculum is paramount to ensuring that each student has appropriate access to grade level content. So Nate added that in. One of the things we also talked about was more about goal number 1 and how to make these achievements in math, ELA, science, and social studies. And it really comes down to goal 1, which talks about the MTSS, the tiered system of supports that we're aiming to provide, which takes all the resources at our disposal and builds them into a full system that looks at every student's strengths and builds off of them and optimizes the resources that we have in a very systematic way. So that's spelled out in the actual report, but it is the main driver of how we're going to do all this. And we take everything that we have and really build it into a system where everybody's kind of rowing in the same direction, whether it be our classroom teachers or support staff, the principals, or above, you can get high gains in whether through a PLC process or just even a general looking at data and a system of supports, you can make a high level of gain. So that is the real goal of the LCAP, is to do that work. That's why it's goal number one. Also, speaking just about the CAS test, the CAS test is, it's interesting because it has both positive things. The whole system or the whole LCAP basically is built, well, one of the main drivers is the CAS support. That's good and bad in that it's one test, and we all know this, and especially within a multi-tiered system of support, you're going to have many small localized assessments that can help drive the supports that you have. That's not going to be a CAS test. But at the same time, the CAS test allows county and while you write the LCAP to kind of micromanage what we're doing within the site and make sure we're accountable at least on that level. So it is an important test, and we'll look for ways to then promote the test taking when it comes, but also not put too much of an emphasis on it, knowing that we're doing a lot of things underneath it that are much more valuable to the teacher in the moment. But certainly for our CAS and for our district, for our funding, quite frankly, the CAS test has that behind it. So we need to make sure that everyone is properly educated that we're doing it and inspired to take the test when it comes around. So our teachers do a really good job at that anyway, and principals in their messaging, and I know some teachers give some practice. I don't want to give too much emphasis at the same time, so it's a tricky kind of thing. So anyway, that's where we're at. That's my CAS speech.
Great. We have questions?
Just a question less about the LCAP, but so, I mean, it is, but just more about the process. So they haven't gotten feedback
Right.
yet. And then, so what is the length of time that we have before we have to approve it?
So tonight we're asking for approval, and then we meet with the county again, and then if there's any changes, we just update it on the website and for
Okay.
approval. But we ask for approval tonight, and then we work with the county and make changes on
Make
the
the changes.
website and just make sure it's forward facing for our community.
And then the changes that they're gonna ask us to make are structure, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't have any questions. It was great to be able to see it in front of us twice, and I think you already have the
Yeah.
comments.
Try to weave them all in.
I ask a question just about sort of CASP testing, so that I know that there's like an alternate form.
Yes.
Are we making sure that every student who can qualify for the alternate is taking the alternate? Because there is just a plain old skill in taking tests, and if your brain just doesn't work well to take it in the regular form. I mean, I'm just thinking about my own daughter when she was younger and she took the CAA or whatever it used to be. I mean, she would be in the like above level,
Yeah.
above expectation or whatever. And I'm like, wow. But I mean, it's very time intensive. It's one-to-one, the teacher administering it, but that was the best way to get to the knowledge she knew. So I'm just wondering if we
Great question.
are finding, if we're making sure that the children who could qualify for the modified are actually taking it.
I can speak for Roosevelt for sure. We had one student that took the
COP.
the COP, yeah. And so we do, it all comes out of the IEP that when we talk about that. And we also try to find accommodations that make it, there are several things. And again, Nate is great at kind of helping us out to find the different accommodations you get to kind of get at the actual skill and get rid of the unnecessary parts for students that need that. And I think all the sites do a really good job of that. And that comes through the RTI specialists and through the classroom teachers. Everybody's getting really a lot more educated staff-wise about what the CAS is. I mean, it's been several years now. So.
Yeah. For students to qualify for the CAW, they have to actually be on an alternative curriculum.
Oh.
So we do that at the grades 3 through 8. They are available to that. But also to what Principal Paveo is speaking to, Coordinator Wong, and then all of our principals are also aware of in our assessment system called TOMS. Funny names that we have for everything. TOMS actually goes into any student that has a 504 or an IEP or just needs alternative supports. We can go in and add accommodations. So we can do enlarged print, we can do voice to text, we can do speech to
You can take.
speech to text, we can have it go both ways. So there's all different accommodations that we can add to help remove any barriers. So like Principal Paveo is speaking to, we can actually get to see what the student knows with removing some of those barriers to help.
Mm.
And that's something that we've worked on the last few years, and we're trying to even be more robust and offering those accommodations to help see exactly what our students know.
Yeah, because I worry that we're underestimating what they know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, we also at the same time try to lean towards everybody taking the same test. So making sure that we do keep the bar high for everyone.
Right, right.
So so to those accommodations, then do we have someone that's coordinating in CASP? Like our multilingual learners getting the directions in their home language? They can't take the test in their home language, but they can read the directions later, right?
Correct. So that's our coordinator of assessment and special projects, Nate Wong. So every site, their principals or their RTI specialists or their VPs, whoever's assigned at that site, it goes into Power School, and the Power School extracts it out, and then it goes into the system called TOMS. I don't know what TOMS stands for at the top of my head. Like that's one of the acronyms I can't think about. But that extracts it up to the state database, and that's what puts it in. So when it gets assigned, when the test gets pushed out to that student's Chromebook, their accommodations are built into their assessment that they have through their state assigned student ID number. So it's already there. But that's one of the things that we work on really hard, is making sure that their accommodations are already in their student information system. So it's assigned to LCAP or Sarah Ghulam Hussein, so that their individual accommodations are there. So those are accommodations, which are different than modifications. So accommodations students can get access to, no problem. Yeah, great questions. Yeah, I mean, lots of new things coming out, because we have the state tests, the CASPs, which are not only English language arts and math, it's also science. And then all of our dual language students also take their tests. They take the Spanish assessment too. So.
Great. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Matt. And thanks to everybody who, I know this is a huge endeavor to put this together, and it's a lot of volunteers at the school sites, teachers, principals, and staff.
Fiscal
So-
department who does the whole budget side.
Exactly. So, and we didn't talk about it for a long time tonight, but it is a second read, and you know, it's an impressive effort. So thanks to everybody that contributed. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
We have to vote, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we do need to approve it, right?
I'll make a motion to approve the LCAP.
I'll second.
Sarah will second.
Sarah, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Great. So moving on to item 12, business and finance. A is update on the FCMAT report from last summer. I believe Marla and Luce presenting.
Yes, thank you. For those of you that remember, last spring, we worked with FCMAT to come in and help us with an audit. And based on their results that we received this fall, we have invited back Luce Caceres to take us through an updated fiscal health risk analysis to see how we're doing. So we're excited to have her back after she has done research and asked for many documents of evidence and questioned us and met with us and questioned us again and asked for more evidence to hear about where we are landing. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. The last time we chatted, we were looking at some not so great results. That wasn't that long ago. So you want to note that, right? So it wasn't that long ago. And Marla and the team, they've really made some pretty notable progress in many areas. And the ones we're going to focus on for today, you can go to the next slide, are going to be the items that are part of the risk analysis that fall under material weakness, which sounds like what it actually is, right? So the areas that matter the most, and we'll go over sort of why they matter the most. And the other area was it's not a material weakness, but internal controls came up as I was looking through the minutes from FCMAT's presentation, there were a lot of questions about internal controls, and so I thought, let's just add that one to the list as well. Do I need the mic? Yeah, I do, okay. So one, I want to note, it wasn't that long ago, right? So it's been less than 7 months. And so for the update to the risk analysis, there are going to be some areas where we've had opportunities to do better, and those will get recognized. And then there's some where we just haven't had the opportunity to do better. And so there isn't an opportunity to take a no and make it a yes. So as an example, we've had plenty of opportunities to improve our management of cash. And so we looked at each one of those. We've not had an opportunity to do better with collective bargaining agreements, because you don't have another TA negotiated yet. And so those aren't opportunities to change our no's to yeses yet, right? We know they'll come down the line. So these are the 4 areas we're really going to focus on. There's plenty more in the fiscal health with risk analysis. Happy to take any questions or thoughts on any of them, but these are the areas of focus. So if we can go to the next slide. Budget monitoring is probably one of those areas where I believe sincerely that while we might have a tendency of sort of wanting to sort of skip through all of the assumptions and then we just go to the end, right? So we don't want to look at the MYP assumptions. We want to look at the fund balance, right? We skip through those first couple of pages. I would stress to you that the most important parts of it are those first couple of sections where those assumptions are spelled out about enrollment and average daily attendance. All of those things that's the arithmetic that gets to the fund balance. And so those are the pieces that matter. Here I've had the opportunity, Maria shared with me the executive summaries she's put together for the interims. I had a chance to preview the one that was put together for the proposed budget. And I could see like it's night and day difference between what we were seeing before and what we're seeing now. And it hits all of those key pieces of data for us to consider. And I really liked that it included sort of here's what's happening at the state level, here's what's happening at the local level. As I love to tell folks, right, that we're so reliant on the state for our health. If when the state has a good year, we have a good year. When the state has a bad year, we have a bad year. When the state has a cash problem, they solve it by making it our problem. Right? And so we're very, very reliant on the state. And we can go to the next slide. Cash management really matters. This is when school districts reach a point of insolvency, it is not about fund balance. It's not about student outcomes. It's about cash in the bank. So when school districts have gone into receivership and had to declare insolvency, it's because they ran out of cash in the bank to pay for payroll, right? So just think of it that way. A paycheck for an employee is going to bounce, and that's when they get taken over. And so that's why cash management is so critically important. One of the improvements that has been made is your cash forecast now covers the current year plus the next year. And that's what you want to see. You want to see those 2 years worth of what that cash flow forecast looks like. And if at any point you might go negative in cash, and that is possible, you might go negative in cash. The key part is having a plan in place for temporary borrowing to get through that negative cash. So do school districts at times have negative cash? Yes, they do. The important part is we're planning for it through whatever mechanism we might choose to, but we just have to have a plan in place. And in order to have a plan in place, you have to know you might go negative in cash. And that was the piece that was missing and is no longer missing. It's now purely a part of your interim, which is great. And on to the next slide. You may recall, you might have blocked this out of your mind, with when FCMAT prepared the MYP at that point in time, they were projecting you were not going to be able to meet your reserve for economic uncertainties in the next 2 years. I remember it very clearly because I thought there was some scrubbing of data that needed to happen. And I think at that point in December, I shared with you that you're seeing one MYP from FCMAT today. And a week later, as part of the first interim report, I told you you're going to see something different. And that's really where the veracity of the data in the first interim report was just tighter than what FCMAT was able to do, because FCMAT is in and out, right? They ask some questions, you don't answer, they make assumptions, and you move on, which is just different from the way staff does it. Staff is really digging in, just scrubbing the data, and that's why you saw a better, more accurate MYP, multi-year projection, as part of that first interim report that you saw a week after the one from FCMAT. One of the pieces I'll note here is I did note that your deficit spending in the next couple of years, and you have the benefit of those one-time dollars that's really supporting the district for a period of time. There's a batch of questions in the fiscal health risk analysis that get to, and is there a plan in place for how you're going to solve the structural deficit? And is there a plan in place and how you're going to maintain your 3% reserve? And so that's probably the next round of thinking that we'll be looking for as we continue that, which is the process of continuous improvement, making sure we've got a plan, a board approved plan in place. So not just staff spec thinking, but board's agreement that this is the way we're going to proceed with adjustments across the years. And the next slide, please. Position control. Right, most of our spending is on people. Sometimes we get criticized for that we spend so much of our budget on people. I would submit to you that's not a fair criticism. We educate kids, and to educate kids, we need people. That's what it takes. We're not making widgets. And so that we spend as much as we do on people is fair and appropriate. The part that matters the most for us with position control is that we really, because we spend so much on people, that we really truly are tracking to people and by position, right? So we manage by what we call a PCN, position control number, because we are trying to control the number of positions, right? That's the critical piece. I can see the improvements that staff has made in terms of ensuring that before something new gets floated, it's got a budget code assigned to it. We know we have the dollars available. We've determined that the need is there for it. You see the conversations are happening at the executive cabinet level. Those are all the critical pieces to position control. When folks ask me, like, what is it? How do I know position control is working? The way I think about it is if human resources, budget, and payroll can complete each other's sentences, right? That's how tight it needs to be. They all need to be in sync about what's happening with the position. And so if they're so in sync that they can complete each other's position, complete each other's sentences, then you know that it's tight and working. And the next one. And internal control. So this isn't an area of material weakness. It was just an area of interest for the board. And so I thought I would note, this is one of the areas where you've had the most improvement. I think in part because the board was really had a lot of questions on it. So staff really focused on ensuring that we have segregation of duties in place, that people who are being held accountable for what they need to know and moving the pieces together. This could be another area. I recall, this was an area of focus that we pointed out to the auditors. And I think it can be another round where we just ensure with the auditors are auditing the current year, we tell them we want you to continue to focus on this area and make sure that improvements are being made where we want to see them made. And then next slide, please. So I looked over all the minutes, and one of the pieces that I noted was there was a question posed to FCMAT about where did we think we should be able to see ourselves in the next 6 months, and they were hesitant to answer, right? And I raised my hand. I was like, I'm less hesitant to answer. Like, you need to move from high to moderate the next time we talk. You're there. You're actually just a couple of percentage points short of getting into the low area, and so. Just take a moment, right, and enjoy that. That is great progress over a short amount of time. And I can see from what staff has put together, it's the stuff that sticks. Sometimes I feel like when we're trying to make improvements, we sort of want to be able to make, to note that we've taken 30 steps forward. Sometimes 30 steps forward isn't the best way to go. Sometimes it's 4 steps forward, but it's 4 solid steps forward that are going to stick. And those are the improvements I'm seeing in the way staff is rethinking the way information gets processed and what's coming to the board so that you are in a better place to be able to ask the questions that you need to ask. An area that will be next up for just continuing to improve operations, it's going to be special education. That's an area where not a lot of energy has been put into thinking about lots of energy gets put into special education, but in terms of the risk analysis, not so much. And so that's going to be an area of focus for the next round. There's probably a couple of pieces that we can look at doing for the employee benefits piece, and that's just making sure the benefits we're paying for out the door are definitely the ones to the people who should have it, to the people who are eligible. And so there's some audits we can do to ensure that lines up. And then the last piece is that deficit spending that I mentioned earlier, right? So it's your deficit spending, it's there, and then coming up with that plan of what are we going to do to address that deficit spending so that we don't have to worry about becoming insolvent down the line, right? We always have to think for 3 years, 2 years ahead of where we currently are. With that, I'll pause. I do really want to say though, congratulate yourself. Like it's significant improvement in a short period of time, and it's the good stuff. It's the solid stuff that sticks. It's not for show.
I mean, I agree. I was thrilled to see the number where it was. I'm not a super huge fan of just the yeses and nos, but I know they map to real things. And I appreciate that you said we focused on the areas that will stick and make lasting changes. Because I think that was some of the guidance from the board was don't try to do everything in this report, but tell us what's most important and focus on that. And it sounds like we've done a good job of that. So that's great to hear. I think the deficit spending is high on our list, top of our list probably. So we're well aware of that. It's good to hear the reinforcement on that. Yeah, your support and helping us, identify these problems and get us on the right path has been great. So I really appreciate your help, Luce. I don't know if I had any questions. We do have a new auditor, so we'll have fresh eyes on everything next year.
I just had one question. You spoke about the reserves and 3% minimum. Could I ask, I don't know if you're able to answer this, but based on your knowledge of our district and experience in the field in general, is there a number we should be shooting at for the future where we should be with that?
It's a great question. And I'm going to give you the most frustrating answer always, and that's it depends. Some of the things that it depends on are going to be what's happening context-wise in your district. So as an example, if you are declining in enrollment, you're going to want to have a reserve that exceeds that 3% reserve because you are trying to ensure that you can soften the landing for some school sites, right? Minimize, let's say, the number of combo classes. And that means setting aside extra dollars to ensure you don't have combo classes. You would actually be doing something similar if you were increasing in enrollment. You want to make sure that you're going to have enough staffing in place, and so you would set aside dollars for it. If you know you have some adoptions coming up, if you know you're trying to get to one-on-one technology devices, you want to set those dollars aside. And so that way it depends on context and what's happening and what you're trying to accomplish. The GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, they've put out that you want to have about 70%. And that's essentially what they're claiming is you want to have so many months of operations available there, right? One of the things that's helpful to do is when you look at your reserve, ask the question, how many days of payroll is this worth, right? So that Marie knows that, right? It's usually days of payroll, not months of payroll that make up your reserve. And so a question you can ask, how many days of payroll are we comfortable having, right? Isn't enough to have a week and a half? Do we want to have a full month? The tension with that though is the more we set aside, that means you're not serving kids in that day, right? So if you aim, like I've seen school districts that have 20+% reserve, and I ask questions about it. When I see they have reserve, when they have carryover and things like Title I, which is for our neediest kids. What I always say is unless you have closed the opportunity gap, you should have carryover entitlement. If you closed it, great, have carryover entitlement. Short of that, should be spending those dollars on those kids. Those are the kids who are generating dollars. So those are some of the things to wonder about and to ask staff about as we're figuring out what is that right percentage. And sometimes it's not a percentage, it's a number, right? So to replace technology, we need to have $250,000 set aside every year. And so then it's a number, you're setting it aside and you know it's a part of your bottom line. So that, I hope that helps.
It did. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Great, thank you, Liz.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right, on a related topic, item 12B is the budget adoption, 24-25 budget adoption.
Yes, so at the last board meeting, I presented the proposed 24-25 budget. There were no changes to the proposal. And I would like to recommend that you approve the 24-25 proposed budget.
Great. Any questions, anything new from last week? Okay. I'll move approval of the budget. There's a second. Lisa, second. All those in favor? Aye. 5-0. Thanks, Marie. All right, any public statements related to non-agenda items?
No, President Brett.
Item 14 is board requested items. Our previously requested items include superintendent's multi-year plan in September, a math pathways presentation specifically regarding BIS sometime in the fall of next year. And do we have any new topics for discussion? Okay, great.
Well, is it presumed that we're gonna be talking about the style schedule in August?
Correct.
Yeah, good point. Right. That's coming back. Yes. Great. Well, we're going to reconvene to closed session and come back for adjournment, but that concludes the public portion of the meeting. So.